following is a JCTV Channel 16 special report.
North Dakota Senator Ryan Taylor, member of the Democratic Party, first took office in 2002 and was re-elected in 2006 and 2010. In 2011, the senator was named the Senate Minority Leader. Taylor is the fourth generation North Dakotan who graduated from North Dakota State University. He is married to his wife Nikki and has 3 children. Good morning, welcome to JCTV Channel 16 News Special Report. I'm JT Petsch. Joining us today in the studio is State Senator Ryan Taylor, who represents 7th District in North Dakota Senate and is seeking Democratic non-partisan league nomination for the governor this year. Senator, thank you for joining us today in studio. We are glad to have you here, as always.
Good to be here, JT. Thanks for inviting me in.
Hey, thank you. As our station is carried to over 8,000 homes in 4 counties, some of our viewers may not be aware of the service in the legislature, but certainly have a lot of fans in your lectures through syndicated newspapers and columns. And from what I understand, you have another talent you often display as a lariat spinner. What's that all about?
Well, actually, I remember I've been in Jamestown several times for that, and one of the bigger egg banquets kind of in town here. My column is called Cowboy Logic, and that runs in several ag papers around the western U.S. And I do some banquet speaking, just telling stories, but when I'm telling those stories, I use some Will Rogers rope tricks to get my point across. And Will Rogers was a rope spinner years ago, and he was also a guy that was a little bit of a philosopher. And I use Will Rogers quotes even now in my governor's campaign. Oh, yeah. Like Will Rogers saying, you know, we're all ignorant, just on different subjects. And, you know, in our campaign, we want to make sure that that we're talking to all people, because all of us can learn something from somebody else.
Absolutely. Now we understand your ranch has been in your family for over 100 years and was recently inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. Are you still an active rancher, or does the service in the state legislature take up all your time?
Well, we've really been able to balance it out. I have a good friend of the family that will come and feed cows for me when I'm down in the legislature, which is just 80 days every other year. And then we calve those cows out when I get home in May and June, so we calve a little later. But no, that's my bread and butter is the ranch, along with the writing. And you know, it's kind of keeps us on track. It's a good place to raise our family, and there's a lot of history and heritage there, just Absolutely. Like you mentioned with the Cowboy Hall of Fame. We're very proud of that, and we wouldn't be able to do it without a lot of good friends helping us out.
How has your background in farming and ranching played a role in forming your political ideas?
Well, I think it's really who I am. And one thing we learn about, you know, when we work our calves, and we rope the calves, and we go from neighborhood to neighborhood, or, you know, neighbor to neighbor to work them. And I think, you know, service in North Dakota is much the same way. We really are dependent on each other to help each other out. And on a ranch, you help your neighbors. Yeah. And in North Dakota, we need to help our neighbors too. We need to help folks in Jamestown as we look at roads and flooding and infrastructure out in the countryside. But we also know that those folks west of the river are neighbors too, and the impacts they have from oil are horrendous. And that our neighbors in Fargo can't throw sandbags every year and need to have flood control as well. So I think you know, the importance of community is something I certainly learned in a rural place on our ranch.
You currently serve as your party leader in the state senate. How has that experience qualified you in your bid for the gubernatorial node?
Well, I've been in the Senate since 2002, so went through 3 elections. And then serving as leader this last time around, you know, I certainly understand politics. and I've seen the best and the worst of it. You know, I've seen good legislation and bad redistricting. But when folks ask me why I'm running for governor, I can easily tell them that I'm not running because I like politics. I'm running because I love North Dakota. You have to have that understanding of politics, but I think you also got to have a passion for the future of North Dakota, and that comes from our love of the land and what we have here.
Do you have any competition in this next race?
Not for the Democratic nomination. I'm the only declared candidate there. And then on the Republican side, they have two vying for it, and they'll decide their nominee at their state convention. And then there'll be at least two major candidates running for the office. But right now, of the three of us who are declared in both parties, none of us have run for governor before. Because the serving governor was lieutenant and inherited the job when the governor went to the Senate. So I think it's an open race, and I think we all will have a chance to talk about the future of our state and the ideas we want to bring forward.
Now, you declared last December, if I'm right. What went into you wanting to do that? What was behind that decision?
Well, certainly encouragement from friends and people who've gotten to know me and seeing potential for me to do that and offer something to the state of North Dakota. Support of my family and my wife. I wanted to make sure we had that secure. But really, you know, we're looking to the future of North Dakota. And the reason I'm in the race is because I think we have a choice now, because we're at a crossroads of government that is run by a few of the influential who make very big decisions, and the road that I want to be on is to run as the people's governor of North Dakota, where everyone has a voice and everyone matters, whether you're from a small town or a big town, east or west, and really take it out to the broadest number.
Given that the Republicans control the state legislature, the governor's office, the two of the three federal officials, some see the Democratic Nonpartisan League as being the underdogs this year. What are your feelings about that?
Well, you know, obviously politics is best when there's a balance, and there's a give and a take, and there's checks and balances. And I think it's, you know, we play a vitally important role. We've had some really good Democrat governors in the past, and at very opportune times, like when Art Link was governor of North Dakota during our coal development days. We're still developing coal, but we're doing it sustainably, much in great thanks to Art Link. You know, the politics aside a little bit, you know, I've run in District 7 and won 3 elections there, and for the most part, that's a Republican district. But we just talk about ideas. I'm the Democratic candidate, and you know, we look forward to adding those ideas in the mix, and I think we'll be better served when we have more balance.
Now, you've been quoted saying that this is a breakthrough year for North Dakota. Are you talking about the fact that we got the oil boom, and what goes into you feeling this way?
Well, I think it's really a special time in history when I say breakthrough. I mean, we have an opportunity now to do big things in North Dakota. We have the oil. We got to make sure we take care of the land from where that has come, and there's a lot of stress and angst and impact out there. But we get one harvest of the oil. And now what are we going to invest that in once we've healed the scars out west? Now what do we invest it in? And that's where I think it's a breakthrough year in terms of asking ourselves, are we going to invest in the next generations in North Dakota? Are we going to invest in ways that all people can share in this success? Because we won't get this opportunity again.
There have been a lot of reports lately of small towns being overwhelmed, lack of housing, lack of police, and other emergency services by the oil boom. In what way can the governor's office help with these problems?
Well, one thing we do is we tax oil production and extraction to the tune of 11.5%. So we're taking money from the oil boom and bringing it into Bismarck. And our job as governor to lead and step up to the bully pulpit is to get many of those dollars back that they need to really, you know, continue their lives as they have known them, so that they have roads that they can drive on safely, so that they have policing in place that makes them feel safe, and that the kids in the schools actually have classrooms space and don't have to have classes out in the hallway. So it's really a great matter of getting those resources back there to the tune that they need. And then, you know, what's left over, of course, we'll have ability in the state to do things for the whole countryside. I always say if we're going to do right by the East, you know, that includes Jamestown, Fargo, Devils Lake, Grand Forks. To do right by the East, we have to get it right in the West. And we're all in this together.
I agree with that completely. This year, a major initiative is on the ballot to repeal property taxes, which has proven controversial to say the least. What is your position on Amendment 2?
Well, I'm personally in opposition to the measure. I can see the frustration that leads to it actually being on the ballot, though, because property tax doesn't reflect your ability to pay or how much income you've earned as a homeowner or a farm owner. But what I don't like about the measure, as I look at it, you're taking 2,000 local budgets and sending them to Bismarck for the legislature to fund and decide. And I really don't want to see that centralization of government in Bismarck, because I like and trust my local school board, my local township officers, and our county commissioners, and I think they deserve the power, and they keep it local.
Now you mentioned school education, and that education has appeared to be a large part of your upbringing. What ideas are you looking to implement in your next, if you're elected in this upcoming year?
Well, you know, of course, primary and secondary education in North Dakota is our charge in the Constitution. And you know, I think we've done a lot of good there in North Dakota, and we need to continue that, whether you're a rural school district or an urban school district. One of the ideas I've brought forth is on the collegiate side, and I know you and I discussed some relatives you have in Wyoming. You know, Wyoming had a lot of oil and gas revenue, and they invested that in what's called a Hathaway Scholarship. Wyoming kids going to Wyoming colleges there have a much greater chance to affordably get to a Wyoming university. And we could do that in North Dakota. I'd call it a lasting harvest scholarship. Again, we're taking our one-time harvest of oil and making a lasting harvest, and one way to do that is with our young people and families that are trying to figure out how they can afford higher education.
Now, back to agriculture. What are your thoughts on agriculture in North Dakota? How will you improve this agriculture problem?
Well, agriculture is the backbone. Even with oil and everything else going on, farming is still our #1 industry. And as a cattle rancher, I see that pretty up close and personal. You know, the state's role, there's a lot of federal role in terms of the federal farm bill. And as governor, you have to advocate for that, because, you know, your farmers depend on it. And I would be a strong advocate for all those agricultural initiatives. One thing we can do in North Dakota, though, is make sure that our farmers and ranchers can get their product to market. They can get their grain to the elevator and their cattle to the sale barn. And there's a place where the state can play a bigger role, because our roads have been under a lot of stress. Our farms have changed. The loads and the weights have changed, where we have trucks now instead of pickups and stock racks. And tandems, grain trucks. So I think there's opportunities there to continue the support for agriculture, so that it continues to lead our economy.
Now, roads, you mentioned, they have been receiving pretty hard, you know, driving on. What do you see could be done about fixing those roads and making them easier for travel?
Well, again, it's a matter of resources, and the state is actually sitting on resources right now in terms of budget surplus. You know, there's obviously federal help for federal roads, but, you know, counties and townships levy property taxes for the support of their roads, but that only goes so far. And that's when the state should be stepping up to the plate. And we've had bills to try and provide additional support in the legislature, and I would advocate for that, because, you know, the state has a role in helping keep the wheels of commerce turning. And it's not just farmers and ranchers, it's our small manufacturers. It's just a safety issue, so that, you know, if you're taking your kids to town to go to school, or drop them off at daycare, if you're going to pursue your career, I want them to be safe.
Talking about safety, I mean, we've seen a lot of flooding in the last couple of years. I mean, this winter wasn't anything like last couple winters with not that much snow, but I remember driving back up from Arizona, and there was still water. This was, you know, 3 months after I left this previous year. What can you see that can be done about the flooding, and what possible solutions are there for this?
Well, you know, to the extent we can, you know, we need to keep water moving as often as we can. I mean, we look at Devil's Lake, we look at the Red River. You know, it means raising roads in some places. It means rerouting roads, and that's going to take resources. You know, I think, you know, there's tiling going on in farm fields, where maybe there's an opportunity in certain areas where you're trying to keep a road from going under, where you could work with farmers and compensate them to keep some of that water on the fields via drain tile. And then when the danger has passed, you can let that water go. But, you know, we'd have to sit down at the table and work on it as equals, where we have ideas, and make sure people are justly compensated if it serves a public good, and maybe that'll save some infrastructure too.
Do you feel right now there are good programs, you know, implemented right now, or do you think there needs to be more to be done?
Well, I think some of this is new, and via our State Water Commission, which is under the governor's control, you know, we can rewrite some of these opportunities to work with farmers on retention on fields and things like that. So, you know, I mean, technology always changes. We'll have new opportunities to manage water in North Dakota, and that'll take some foresight and some leadership.
Now, back to oil. How will you implement a long-term economic plan with this?
Well, we need to sit down in the communities themselves. One of the things we need to do is make sure the dollars are getting back to these communities in a much quicker fashion. So, you know, that's a matter of formulas that take oil production taxes and get them back where they're needed. I think we also need to sit with the people who are impacted, because it's not just the companies drilling the oil. It's the surface owner, the rancher, who doesn't have mineral rights. It's someone in the community, maybe an elderly person who's just seen their rents increase, and now they can't afford to live there anymore, and they don't have mineral rights. So I think it needs to be an inclusive plan where everybody has input. And we're committed to getting the oil. I mean, our country needs the oil, and we'll do it. We'll want to do it in the safest fashion possible. And maybe it doesn't all need to be done today. You know, we can take a breath here and work this to extend this harvest.
Now, the oil boom has created many jobs. I mean, I myself have contemplated possibly going up there this summer, you know. How do you plan on maintaining and improving employment in this area?
Well, you know, they've got about all the employment they can handle right now, and actually you see businesses there who aren't tied to the energy industry that are just feeling the strain of not finding workers. So I don't know that you need to grow it anymore. I mean, it's you know, there's virtually no unemployment, and right now the communities just need to focus on having places for these people to live. And classrooms for the kids that are coming into their school. And I think it's really going to come back to quality of life as the #1 concern, more so than employment. Because we need to be mindful of the quality of life in these communities. Everyone's got a job that wants a job. My neighbors have had jobs in the oil patch. My brother-in-law works out there as well. And now it's just about making sure the communities are livable.
How is the boom affecting education in these areas?
Well, you know, there's real strain on the school systems. You know, as I visited with the superintendent from the Williston schools at a meeting the other day, at an interim meeting, you know, she showed a picture on her presentation of the kids sitting in the hallway for library, because they had to convert the library to classroom space. And you know, they're wondering about 1,200 more students possibly coming into that school system. I mean, they're just not built for that. So, you know, it could be detrimental to education in terms of those kids right in that community getting their education that they deserve. Obviously, there's money coming in from the oil boom as well to our School Lands Trust Fund, which helps support education. But it's, you know, it's kind of all over the board. The families that live right there, we need to make sure they're taken care of, and we know that it's going to benefit all families across North Dakota to some extent through the School Lands Trust.
What do you feel like you can do anything that can really benefit these small town areas?
Well, for sure. You know, they can only do so much with their local property taxes. It gets back to property taxes. You know, the local property owners, they're not getting as much benefit from the oil as one might think. And when the state has that tax on oil production, it's the state's responsibility to get that back there, even if it means building bricks and mortar or adding modular classrooms to these schools so that these kids have a desk to sit in with the instructor in front of them. So they can't borrow enough in those school districts, they can't tax enough, so the state has a responsibility to come in and help them handle the influx of students.
Are there becoming a demand on teachers in these areas as well?
Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, you have superintendents hiring more teachers in 1 year than they may be hired in their whole career, you know, depending on how long they've been in that school system. And, you know, they're kind of getting it done. They're finding teachers, or even bringing some out of retirement. But it's a stress. And, you know, in McKenzie County, I know they even had a few bus routes that they didn't run. I mean, it's not just teachers, it's bus drivers too. So, you know, every day is a challenge.
Now, going back to property tax, what kind of plan would you implement for the tax relief?
Well, you know, what we've done to date right now is try and buy down the school mill levy, it's called, in property taxes. And that's gotten some relief out there. But still, property valuations have increased. People still see some upward pressure on property taxes. There's a program called the Homestead Tax Credit that I think would be helpful, and it's another avenue for us to look at. But again, it's the state getting resources out to counties and townships and schools, because that's why taxes are levied, is to support those entities. And if we help them, then they don't have to tax as much.
How would you make it fair so that there's no disparity between the wealthy and the middle income families?
Well, we have a graduated income tax in North Dakota, and that's one way to handle disparity. And when we talked tax relief in the last session, our caucus worked hard at making sure middle income earners got tax relief. And you do that as you look at the rates, and we would have just made a flat program that would have got the same amount of relief to everyone, whether you're on the lowest end or the highest end. And what came through in the end of that session was the higher end got bigger breaks and the lower end got smaller breaks, and they increased the disparity. And that wasn't right. So I really want to look at bringing this some common sense. And they extended $25 million in corporate tax relief, even though we have some of the lowest corporate income taxes in the country. I'd rather get it to families.
Yeah. Now, common sense. I was on your webpage, and what is that? What do you mean by bringing back common sense to the state government?
Well, I think common sense is what you find around the coffee table in some of the small town diners. It's what you find at the family's breakfast table. It's people on the ground at the grassroots who know the problem. If you're out in the countryside and your road has gone underwater, you can look at that because you live there and probably bring some common sense to it, better than someone from Bismarck kind of saying, well, here's what you ought to do. The person right there probably knows what we ought to do, and we need to ask them.
Yeah. So going to the actual people,
Yeah, go to the grassroots, and maybe that's cowboy logic, I don't know, but you can call it anything you want. It's
if elected as governor, what committees would you participate in?
Well, the governor oversees, a host of agencies, and in my legislative career, I've been on education committee, agriculture, transportation, but the governor has a hand in all of that. You appoint the board of higher education, you work with the water commission, you're on the industrial commission. I think is going to be a key role for the governor, who sits on the industrial commission as we handle this latest oil boom through their oil and gas division. The governor needs to be an active participant that asks the tough questions on the future of North Dakota.
Now, time. How much time as a governor do you have to put in? Are you doing the same 80 days, or is it more of an extension?
Well, governor is a full-time job. I'm going to be campaigning full-time now until the election date to become North Dakota's governor. But when that point comes, I'll leave our ranch, and my family and I will be in Bismarck, and we'll still go back to that ranch. But of course, it's a full-time job. You work harder when the legislature is in town to communicate with them, and I think you need to step to the bully pulpit when the legislature is in town, and the governor needs to say, from that point of view, what's important to North Dakotans, because we've traveled North Dakota to listen to these people.
Recent reports showed by the end of 2011, Governor Jack Dalrymple has raised over $820,000 in his bid to be elected to the post he assumed after former Governor John Hoeven was elected to the United States Senate. Now the governor appears to have the jump on you in the fundraising effort. Even though you only declared candidacy in December, can you address where you stand in campaign finances right now?
Well, we reported just under $47,000 at year end, and that's compared to the governor's $824,000. So that's a big difference. That's quite a disparity. And I'm not from a family of means or wealth, so we really ask folks to support this candidacy. And it's just regular folks. $50 or $100. As the governor's report came out, you'll see $20,000 from the 36th, the richest man in America, with Continental Oil. I guess I don't have access to that, but in North Dakota, people vote, not dollars. We need the dollars to run a campaign, and we're going to work hard at that. But I'm confident in taking our message out to people, because it doesn't matter how big your bank account is. I want to hear your voice, and I'm going for your vote, not after big out-of-state dollars from people that maybe don't have our best interest in heart.
You were just in, I want to say, UND?
Yeah.
How was that? You know, what was that like, talking to the kids, I'm guessing?
Yeah, well, when we launched our campaign yesterday, we started at UND, and then we went down to Fargo and over to Bismarck and up to my hometown of Towner. But yeah, I had the student body president introduce me up there, and I really appreciate young people in North Dakota because they are our future. Yeah. And I'm anxious to visit with students across every campus, whether it's Jamestown College or UND or Bismarck State, and I want to know what's on their minds, what's on your minds, and because you know you're looking at a long horizon for the future of North Dakota, and I want to hear from you.
Santorum was just here. Did you happen to meet up with him, and what did you feel about that?
No, you know, that went on the same day that I was on the campaign trail, and you know, of course, we're on different political sides of the aisle. Yeah. And, you know, I was really focused on North Dakota issues as we launched this campaign for governor. And, you know, their presidential campaign will have its own nuances. And, you know, some of what we heard, I don't know if eliminating all the federal education funding as he advocated would be good for our local school systems. You know, Williston Town or other places, they depend on, it's not a big chunk of their funding, but it all counts. Yeah. And if you don't have that federal education funding, you're going to have to raise property taxes to make up the slack. So.
And property taxes, of course,
keeps coming up.
Yeah, that it is. What do you feel about alternative energy and any possible efforts it will have on North Dakota?
Well, North Dakota has opportunities to develop all kinds of energy, and we talk a lot about oil and gas and coal, which has always been a mainstay in North Dakota. But you know, we have the ability to generate a lot of electricity from wind in North Dakota, and that's clean and it's renewable. You know, we have ethanol production in North Dakota coming from corn and other crops. I think it all has to be part of the mix. Americans demand more and more energy every year. We should conserve energy as much as we can because, you know, the cheapest energy we can get is the stuff we don't use. But you know, we have to get it from a lot of different sources, and we can't just depend on coal and oil and natural gas. We need to look at everywhere we can.
Now, you talk about sharing our resources with the nation. Can you go in a little more with that?
Well, you know, we're not the biggest population in the country, and so we're net exporters of much of our energy. But one thing I'd like to do before we export the energy, you know, when you take oil, for instance, is I'd like to see us actually add more value to it right here. You know, we're producing 500,000 barrels of oil a day, and the one refinery we have, I believe has a nameplate capacity of 55,000 barrels a day. So we're exporting 450,000 barrels of oil to other people to refine. And you know, I worked in our session to have incentives so that we could add refinery capacity in North Dakota. The Bakken crude is some of the best oil in the world, some of the sweetest crude there is. And why give that to someone else to add value to if we could do it right here? There'd be some jobs, and we'd take some trucks off the road in those western counties that are seeing a lot of crumbling infrastructure.
Absolutely. Well, Senator, thank you again for coming on the show. I know you're a busy man, I'm sure, heading out on the campaign trail. But of course, we thank you very much for coming out and joining us on JCTV Channel 16. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, JT.
But be sure to join us for later today for our regularly scheduled newscast here on JCTV at 6:30, 8:30, and 10:30, when we'll continue to connect the campus with community. I'm JT Petsch. Thank you, and good day.